Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Business Spotlight podcast. I'm joined today by Simon Ferrar, and Simon is the founder of the Clandon Woods Natural Burial Ground. Simon, welcome to the call. It's nice to see you.
Good morning, Gavin, and thank you for the invitation.
So how was my introduction? Did I get that 100% right?
Not 100%, but it's actually Clandon Wood Nature Reserve and Natural Burial Ground. And that's a distinction that's very important that will come out probably in further questioning from you.
Okay, excellent. Well, let's dig into a little bit about how this project and this business came about for you. I understand it's been going about 11 years. What led you down this particular path and into this particular business?
The business, yes, about 11 years. My journey to this point started in 2005 at my Aunt Rosie's funeral. Now, it was a beautiful natural burial up in Worcestershire. And it was a natural burial that I'd never heard of. And like most people back then, I'd been to burials and cremations and just kind of accepted the way things are done, very much as people are still doing today. And it was it was a cold, sunny November morning, and it was in this beautiful countryside, and she had this willow basket, and I was just standing there thinking, why don't we do it this way? And that really was my prime mover into looking further into natural burial. And 4 years later, I found the land here at Clandon Wood.
There's a big difference, isn't there, between thinking this is a great idea and I'm going to do something about that. Are there any other motivators involved from your point of view?
You mentioned I suppose there was one on the day.
Yeah.
I know my brother had paid £700 for the grave, and I was looking around the field thinking, there's a lot of potential £700 holes in this field. I wonder whether this would replicate somewhere else. But I had the heart feeling first about why don't we do it this way, and that has carried me forward right the way through to this very moment.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about the business as it is now, the size of your team, where you're based.
We're based in it's called Clandon Wood. We're between two ancient villages of East and West Clandon, just outside of Guildford in Surrey. It is a 31-acre nature reserve that now, I mean, my job really is talking to people like you, Gavin, and going out and doing talks, presentations. I've done a TEDx talk as well. But my main staff on site I've got nine staff on site in the office that rotate through a seven-day continual period, and 3 permanent ground staff.
Okay. And the nature reserve, is that a key driver in this project, or is it something that helps perhaps you to bring up the topic and the purpose of Clandon Wood to people who may not have previously considered natural burials?
It's both. The ideals and ethos behind natural burial is that the natural burial ground should have a purpose to exist other than just being a cemetery. Now that purpose gives it a reason to be looked after while it's in operation, obviously, but also once it's reached capacity. And it should be sustainable. So we've created a new sustainable landscape. The land we had here was set aside farmland. It hadn't been planted for about 8 years. It was covered with scrub and rubbish, and we converted it into a nature reserve. It's called Clandon Wood because I was going to originally cover it with trees, but the more research I did, it became evident that I needed more of a diverse landscape for a nature reserve.
So how much learning did you find yourself needing to do in order to kind of build this project up?
100%, loads. Apart from the fact that I'm human and I'm going to die, that's the only thing I really knew about funeral world. So I put an offer on the land on 2009, and by the time we got the purchase sorted out and then we went through planning, we started on site beginning of 2012. Yeah.
Now you talk about the fact that we're human, we're going to die. It's the ultimate statistic, of course, and yet it's the one that people want to talk about the least. So coming at it from a my business hat point of view on, how do you market and sell this concept to people? What sort of approach you take to that?
That is probably number one sales question. Back in 2012, when we first started, it was a new business, so it had the challenges of a new business, but it was a business that most people then had never heard of. So it was introducing a new concept, and then the third thing was it's a subject matter most people don't want to talk about. So from a sales point of view, it was a very big challenge.
Yeah. So do you work, I mean, I'm presuming that you're going to have partnerships with people like funeral directors and those sort of things. Do you feel that do you kind of just rely on them to do their bit for you, or do you help them with their positioning and how they might approach the topic? Is it a partnership, or how does it work out in terms of referring people to you?
Funeral directors are kind of bread and butter, if you like. So they know we're here now. I did a lot in the, a lot of positioning with them in the early days, knowing that, describing what we were going to be doing, and importantly, as time went on, ensuring that they were not just comfortable, but they knew we were professional about what we were doing, so that they could come here. And funeral directors are very much about image. As far as their families and their clients are concerned. Yeah. And if they felt that we weren't going to be professional in what we were doing, and everything would be done when they got here, and they knew that the grave would be dug and it would be the right size, and our service pavilion was of a certain standard, and all the staff were in tune with what was needed for their particular funeral, that was a big, not a hurdle, but it was something that we needed to make sure we were getting right every single time. You only get one chance at every single funeral. It's got to be the best funeral ever that you've ever done every single time. Now, we also get a lot of business now coming through our website. And I said a little bit earlier on, is I go out and do a lot of talks and presentations addressing the fact that it's a subject matter most people are happy not talking about, especially men. You try and engage some men in conversation about death and dying, is I don't care, I'll be dead, put me in a bag and throw me in a skip. So not very nice and not legal. So it's all that, and that's where the nature reserve part comes in.
Yeah. See, I find the whole funeral business really interesting. As a business coach, I've worked and spoken with funeral directors, and it is, it's one of those businesses that does have a unique situation. And the one thing that occurs to me, which has probably occurred to you many, many times, is that your customer isn't the deceased. Your customer is the family of the deceased. And listening to you just now talking about, oh, just throw me in a hole and blah blah blah, but that's not a conversation you're ever going to have. So I guess with the family, you have the opportunity also to build your reputation and get your message out there, and for them effectively to be advocates to their friends and wider family. Is that something that you find, or is that something?
Oh, absolutely. But actually, just going back to what you said initially, was it's not just the families, because a lot of people now are planning ahead of time. So, I mean, our mum and dads and our grands and that used to go to the co-op and organise funeral plans, but people are actually being now more proactive and coming out. They might have a funeral plan or insurance policy or some other savings put aside for their funeral, but what they're also doing is purchasing their burial plot. So they're coming out, choosing a plot ahead of time, and that's when their relationship with Clandon Woods starts. So hopefully they've got 20, 30, 40 years of enjoying Clandon Wood as a nature reserve before they actually become buried, before they get buried here. There's obviously at need death, so a death has occurred and we get approached by the family. So yes, there is that relationship we develop with family members of parents and grandparents that have died.
That's really interesting to hear.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know whether it's I'm attracting certain kinds of people to these podcasts, but I've had several podcasts where environment and sustainability has been a theme. So I am interested to know what your sort of development plans are for the nature reserve part of it in the future going forwards.
Now, the sustainability part again is part of that natural burial ethos, and you're creating. We've created a nature reserve. It could be farmers now diversify using hay meadows and orchards, sustainable landscapes that are generally productive, and we're productive in a small way. So we've got 31 acres of wildflower meadow, which is a very rare landscape now
Yeah,
in today's
and crucial, absolutely
today's
crucial
Britain.
for insects and
Indeed,
things. Yeah,
indeed.
yeah,
They reckon turn of last century, we've lost about 95% of conventional traditional
yeah.
wildflower meadows in Britain, and it's it's not just a valuable landscape from a nature point of view, but it was a valuable landscape from a productive point of view. And a wildflower meadow hay was back in the day was about 5 times the value of just a normal grass hay meadow.
Yeah.
And even now, we produce, depending on what the weathers have been, it could be 40 bales of hay up to 140, depending on how much rain and how much weather we've had. But the hay goes off to our local horseman, and he says even when even the hay is very stalky, he can tell when his horses are eating it because their coats improve. So you can see the nutrition that's actually
Yeah.
in a wildflower meadow. And also it's called Clandon Woods, so we can originally cover it with trees.
Yep.
So we pushed the actual trees to the outside
Yep.
when I needed more of a diverse landscape. And so eventually those trees will become overstory trees, and then coppice crop will be planted between them. So eventually, as years go by, it will be coppiced every 6 years or so. So it's truly sustainable and productive. And the key to that longevity really is, and it's fairly unique to Clandon Wood as far as the natural burial grounds are concerned, is that every time somebody purchases a plot here, they pay £250 into a trust fund. Now that trust fund, by the time I've sold all the plots, 29,000 plots, that's between full burials and ash burials, that trust fund should be in excess of £7 million. So it's sustainably managed. It's only going to be a natural burial ground ever. Once it's reached capacity, it's a nature reserve, and there's lots of money there to look after it. So there's no reason why it shouldn't be Clandon Wood Nature Reserve for centuries.
Simon, there's been so much in your responses and answers. I was only going to ask a couple of questions, and I've asked far more than that, and I could go on. But it's been really fascinating to hear your journey, particularly the fact that all of this has come through a learning exercise, started by passion, started by vision, developed by learning, developed by team and relationships and partnerships and all those things. It's been fascinating talking to you. Thank you for your time on the podcast.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Appreciate it.